There are lots of different products you can use for different surfaces. This is drywall, so we're going to use what's commonly known as drywall mud or joint compound to fill these little holes. If you want to repair trim or if you want to repair paneling, which is made of wood, you want to use a wood filler for that. So just read the directions on your product to make sure you're using the right thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to fill these holes. Sometimes this will shrink into the hole and you might have to do it more than once. But it doesn't take a lot at all. And this is just a regular plastic, I don't know, 50-cent spatula from the hardware store. So we're just going to get enough on there and we're going to press it in, but then we're going to scrape it off. And that's simply filling the hole and making sure that that's a smooth surface. Now, the reason we're doing this is because we're going to do something smooth over this wall. If we were going to do a textured finish here, this would not even be necessary because our textured finish product would fill these holes and cover all that up. Now, with things that are not quite as deep as nail holes, we have some little scars and things here. It'll do the same thing for that. And sometimes you have to come back and sand these spots, and sometimes you don't, just depending on what you're putting over this surface. The smoother your little plastic knife or even the metal one, the better. If you see ridges in your product here and it's creating little lines, you can either sand those out later or scrape off that edge and maybe get some little get a smoother edge along this plastic tool. Now this drywall compound is pink, not because I'm a girl, but because it is to help me know when it's dry. It dries white and goes on pink. So it's very helpful when you're waiting for it to dry or when you're doing something that requires a little bit more of the product and it takes a lot longer for it to dry. And you might want to feel the wall. If you can't see the holes at an angle or you don't see something, you can just run your hand over it and see if you feel any spots. If there's something that's raised on the wall, then you can just clean off your spatula or use a metal one and scrape it off, and then it'll be a smooth surface for you. Now sometimes if you're rubbing your hand over the wall, you'll find some spots that are kind of not terribly visible until you get in the right light. This one right here is a nail pop, and what's happening underneath is the nail that holds the drywall to the stud is coming loose. So it may not look terrible now, but it's going to get worse. So what we want to do is fix this, and it simply takes tapping that in with the hammer. Sometimes these are screwed in instead of nails, so you want to pay attention to that and use the right tool that you need at the time. So what we're going to do is tap that in. And then we're going to fill that little divot that we created the same way we did before. Step 3, you're ready, and this is critical. You have to tape. Now there are several different types of tape, and this is the most commonly used. It's blue painter's tape, and it's an easy release tape. That means that when you stick it to a surface and then you pull it off later after you've painted, it doesn't take off the surface of whatever was underneath it. For instance, your trim paint, because you don't want to remove that when you take this off the surface. Now, there are different widths of this. There are 2 inches, maybe 1.5 inches as well. Depending on how messy a painter you are, you might want to get a little bit wider tape. You can also use this type of tape. This is really cool. It has plastic already attached and it's very convenient. There's also a purple painter's tape, and it's just a little bit easier release, say if you're doing stripes or something with a little bit more sensitive surface. The thing you definitely don't want to use is masking tape or any kind of packing tape. The tapes that are meant to hold things together are not the kind that you want to use to paint with. What we're trying to do here is keep the paint off of the things that we don't want painted. For instance, you don't want to paint this the same color as your walls. So we want to create a straight, perfect line around this without painting this, but getting all the way up to the edge. So we're going to take off a piece of tape, simply the size of maybe one side at a time. Just start out with some small pieces if you're not used to taping. And then you want to hold it right up next to that surface without getting the tape on the wall that you are painting. Because obviously, anywhere that you tape, the paint is not going to go there. And when you pull that tape off, you're going to have a straight line. That's what you want anyway. You want a straight line. So we're simply going to tape all the way around. And you don't have to tape this surface unless you feel like you're really going to make a big mess. All right, let's move on to the trim. All right, we're going to tape the baseboard. Now, a lot of times when you go to tape baseboard, you'll realize that that painted line is not really straight, but what you want to create is a straight line. So you want to tape as though you're creating that line for the future, because you're going to paint all of this surface and come down to here, which is where it's going to meet your tape. Right here. So once this is all painted and you peel off this piece of tape, you're going to have this perfect straight line. When it comes to corners, small pieces are your best friends. So just take small pieces, and sometimes it just takes one hand and just tape along that line. If you're not very practiced at it, a lot of times it will take a few small pieces. Get what you can, tear off a new piece, and add it right over the top. That's a lot better than trying to peel off the same piece of tape 15 times, getting mad at it. This is just the easier way. Now, if you're seeing white, just like that right there, then we need a little bit more tape just to cover up, to make sure that the line that we create is perfectly straight. And there we go. You might have to come back and reseal that when you get to this point. By the time you've taped an entire room sometimes, you just have to run your finger back over it to make sure it's good and sealed before you paint. So you also want to create a really straight line along the edge of your door frame. To do that, you just stretch your tape out, hold it at the top and bottom, and then run your finger along there to press it down and seal it. Now for larger jobs, you might really want to get a friend or some extra set of hands. Maybe a husband would be a great idea to help tape. All right, what we're prepping for is to treat this wall with faux finish or with paint. What we don't want to do is paint the ceiling or this other wall that's on the other side of it. So we have to frame this wall so that nothing else gets painted except what we're trying to paint, which means taping the ceiling. The same way we did before, stretching your piece of tape out, doing the ends and pressing along that edge seals the entire piece of tape and gives you a great straight line. And remember, this is easy release tape, so it's going to come off of there without pulling off your previous tape or your previous paint. And you want to be sure to get in any little crevices like this fold right here to where the paint will not seep into that edge.